Harrison's world shattered in a single night. The kind of night where the air feels too heavy to breathe. At 25, he stood on the balcony of his family's crumbling Brooklyn brownstone, staring at the city that had chewed up his dreams and spit them out. His father's voice, sharp as a blade, still echoed, "You marry him, or we lose everything." The ultimatum had come like a guillotine. The Pierce family, once a cornerstone of New York's elite, was drowning in debt. Harrison's father, a man of pride and secrets, had gambled their legacy on failed ventures, leaving them one signature away from ruin. That signature was Harrison's, on a marriage contract binding him to Ethan Caldwell, the enigmatic CEO of Caldwell Enterprises. Ethan, 30, was a name whispered in boardrooms and tabloids alike, a man whose cold demeanor and ruthless ambition had built an empire from nothing. Harrison had never met him, but the stories painted a picture of a heartless machine in a tailored suit. And now, Harrison was to be his husband. The idea churned his stomach. Marriage, to Harrison, was supposed to be about love, wild, reckless, soul-shaking love. Not a transaction to save a sinking ship. But the alternative was unthinkable, his family homeless. His younger sister Lily losing her chance at college. Their name reduced to a footnote in New York's unforgiving history. So, he'd agreed, his heart pounding with resentment and fear, to meet Ethan at a gala the next evening. The gala was a glittering cage, held at a Manhattan penthouse overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across the room, and the air buzzed with the chatter of the city's elite. Harrison, in a fitted black tuxedo that hugged his lean frame, felt like an imposter. His chestnut hair fell in soft waves, and his hazel eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the man who would chain him to a loveless future. He caught sight of Ethan across the room, and his breath hitched. Ethan Caldwell was not what Harrison expected. Yes, he was tall and commanding, with jet black hair swept back and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through everything. But there was something else, a flicker of intensity beneath his icy exterior, a pull that made Harrison's pulse race despite himself. Ethan's tailored charcoal suit accentuated his broad shoulders, and when their eyes met, Harrison felt a jolt, like a spark in a storm. "Mr. Pierce," Ethan said, his voice low and smooth. As he approached, "I assume you know why we're here." Harrison forced a smile, though his chest tightened. "To sign my life away." Apparently, Ethan's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "A business arrangement." Nothing more. The word stung, but Harrison held his ground. "And if I say no?" Ethan's gaze darkened. Unreadable. "You won't." The rest of the evening was a blur of polite introductions and veiled negotiations. Ethan was all business, discussing terms with Harrison's father as if Harrison were a commodity. Yet, every time Ethan's eyes flicked to Harrison, there was something unspoken, a tension that made Harrison's skin prickle. By the night's end, the contract was signed, sealing Harrison's fate. In 2 weeks, he would marry Ethan Caldwell, a man he barely knew, in a ceremony that felt more like a merger than a union. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of fittings, rehearsals, and media scrutiny. The tabloids had a field day. Brooklyn Airwed's ruthless CEO in scandalous deal. Harrison avoided the headlines, but the whispers followed him everywhere. His friends, once vibrant and supportive, grew distant, unsure how to navigate his new reality. Only Lily, his 17-year-old sister, remained his anchor. "You don't have to do this, Harry," she said one night, her voice trembling. "We'll figure it out." But Harrison knew there was no other way. "It's just a contract. Lil, I'll survive." The wedding was a spectacle, held at a historic estate in the Hamptons. Harrison stood at the altar, his heart pounding as Ethan approached, every inch the untouchable CEO. Their vows were mechanical, a recitation of duty rather than devotion. When Ethan slipped the ring onto Harrison's finger, his touch was brief but electric, sending a shiver down Harrison's spine. The crowd applauded, oblivious to the storm raging inside him. Their honeymoon was a formality, a week in a private villa in the Catskills. Harrison expected distance, coldness, maybe even cruelty. But Ethan surprised him. He was reserved, yes, but there were moments, small, fleeting ones, where his guard slipped. A lingering glance over breakfast. A soft, "Are you okay?" when Harrison tripped on a hike. Each gesture chipped away at Harrison's defenses, leaving him confused and, worse, curious. One evening, as they sat by the villa's fireplace, Ethan broke the silence. "You hate me, don't you?" Harrison blinked, caught off guard. "I don't know you enough to hate you." Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, vulnerability flickered in his eyes. "This wasn't my idea either, Harrison. But I'll keep my end of the deal. Your family's safe." The words were meant to reassure, but they only deepened Harrison's unease. Why did Ethan agree to this? What did he gain from a marriage he clearly didn't want? The questions gnawed at him, but Ethan's walls were impenetrable. As the weeks turned into months, Harrison moved into Ethan's sleek Manhattan penthouse, a cold, modern space that felt more like a museum than a home. Their marriage was a performance, public appearances, strained smiles, and separate bedrooms. But Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was watching him, studying him, like a puzzle he was determined to solve. And then there were the moments that made no sense, Ethan remembering Harrison's coffee order, or the time he found Ethan reading one of Harrison's favorite books, The Great Gatsby, with a bookmark in the exact chapter Harrison loved. One night, unable to sleep, Harrison wandered into the penthouse's study. He found a locked drawer in Ethan's desk, curiosity getting the better of him. He shouldn't have pried, but something urged him on. Inside, he found a photograph, a younger Ethan, maybe 20, standing beside a boy who looked eerily familiar. The boy had Harrison's eyes, his smile. On the back, in faded ink, was written Summer, 2015. H&E. Harrison's heart stopped. He didn't remember this photo, didn't remember Ethan. But the evidence was undeniable. Their paths had crossed before, long before this forced marriage. The realization hit like a tidal wave. And when Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face pale, Harrison knew the truth was about to unravel. "Who are you?" "Really?" Harrison demanded, holding up the photo. Ethan's eyes softened, a storm of emotions breaking through his icy facade. "Someone who's been waiting for you for a long time." The photograph trembled in Harrison's hand, the faded ink searing into his mind. Summer, 2015. H&E, 10 years ago. He'd been 15. A lanky kid with big dreams and a heart too open for his own good. He searched Ethan's face for answers, but the CEO stood frozen in the doorway. His blue eyes a mix of guilt and something deeper, something Harrison couldn't name. "Explain this," Harrison said, his voice sharp but unsteady. "Why do you have this? Why does it feel like you've been lying to me?" Ethan stepped forward, his movement slow, deliberate. "You haven't lit." "Harrison, I just couldn't tell you everything." "That's not an answer." Harrison's voice cracked. The weight of the past months, the marriage, the isolation, the confusion crashing down. "You're my husband, but I don't even know you. And now this." He thrust the photo forward. "Who were you to me?" Ethan's jaw clenched, and for the first time, Harrison saw cracks in his polished armor. "Sit down," Ethan said quietly. "Please." Reluctantly, Harrison sank into the leather chair, the photo still clutched in his hand. Ethan sat across from him, the distance between them feeling like miles. "In 2015, Ethan began, his voice low. "I wasn't Ethan Caldwell, CEO. I was just Ethan, a kid working odd jobs to survive. I spent that summer as a groundskeeper at your family's estate in upstate New York." Harrison's mind reeled. The Pierce estate had been his childhood haven, a sprawling property where he'd spent summers exploring the woods and dreaming of a life beyond his family's expectations. "A groundskeeper?" he echoed, disbelief coloring his tone. "You expect me to believe that?" Ethan's lips curved faintly, a ghost of a smile. "You were different back then. Fearless. You'd sneak out to the lake at night, talking about how you travel the world. Paint. Live on your own terms. I was just the guy who mowed the lawns. But you talked to me like I mattered." Harrison's chest tightened. Flashes of that summer flickered in his mind, late nights by the lake. The scent of pine, a quiet boy who listened to his ramblings without judgment. "That was you," he whispered. Ethan nodded. "You didn't know my last name. I didn't know yours. You just called me E, and I called you H. We were kids. Harrison. But those nights, they changed me." The confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. Harrison's gaze dropped to the photo, the boyish grin on his own face. The way Ethan, younger, softer, stood close, their shoulders brushing. "Why didn't you tell me?" Harrison asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "All this time, you knew who I was." Ethan leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "Because I wasn't that kid anymore. By the time I built Caldwell Enterprises, your family was falling apart. When your father came to me with this deal, I saw a chance to protect you, to keep you safe, like I promised myself I would back then." "Protect me?" Harrison's laugh was bitter. "You call this protection? Forcing me into a marriage, keeping secrets, acting like I'm just a pawn in your game?" "You're not a pawn," Ethan said fiercely, his voice rising for the first time. "I didn't want this either, but it was the only way to save your family without them losing everything. I thought I could keep my distance, keep it professional. But you make that impossible." Harrison's breath caught. There was again that intensity in Ethan's eyes, the pull that had haunted him since the gala. He wanted to be angry, to demand more answers, but the vulnerability in Ethan's voice disarmed him. "What do you mean? Impossible?" he asked, softer now. Ethan hesitated, then stood, crossing to the window. The city lights glittered below, a reminder of the empire he'd built and the walls he'd erected. Every time I look at you, he said, his back to Harrison, I see the boy who made me believe in something bigger than survival. And I hate myself for dragging you into this. The room fell silent, the weight of Ethan's words settling over them. Harrison's anger wavered, replaced by a confusing mix of longing and betrayal. He stood, stepping closer to Ethan. If you cared so much, why act so cold? Why make me feel like I'm nothing to you? Ethan turned, his eyes searching Harrison's. Because if I let myself feel anything, I wouldn't be able to stop. The admission hit Harrison like a punch. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he turned and left the study, the photo still in his hand, his heart a tangled mess of questions and emotions. The next morning, Harrison woke to find Ethan gone. A note on the kitchen counter at the office. We'll talk tonight. The penthouse felt emptier than ever, and Harrison's thoughts spiraled. He needed answers, not just about Ethan, but about himself. Who had he been back then? That boy by the lake? And why did Ethan's confession make his heart race in ways he wasn't ready to admit? He spent the day wandering the city, the photo tucked in his pocket. Central Park was ablaze with autumn colors, and as he sat by the Bethesda fountain, memories of that summer began to surface. The boy he'd called, he had been quiet but kind, his blue eyes always watching, always listening. Harrison had shared his dreams, his fears, even his confusion about his identity. And he had never judged, only offered a quiet strength that made Harrison feel seen. By the time he returned to the penthouse, Ethan was waiting, his expression guarded but hopeful. I wasn't sure you'd come back, Ethan said. I needed to think, Harrison replied, his voice steadier now. About you. About us. About who we were. And Ethan's tone was cautious, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of hope. Harrison took a deep breath. I remember you, Ethan. Not everything, but enough. And I want to know more. About you. About why you did this. But I need you to be honest with me. No more secrets. Ethan nodded, a weight seeming to lift from his shoulders. No more secrets. I promise. That night, they talked for hours, peeling back layers of the past. Ethan spoke of his childhood in foster care, his relentless drive to prove himself, and the summer that changed everything. Harrison shared his own struggles, his fear of disappointing his family, his longing for a life that felt true. For the first time, their marriage felt less like a contract and more like a fragile bridge between two souls who'd once known each other deeply. But the past wasn't the only shadow looming. Harrison's father was hiding something, and whispers of a corporate conspiracy began to surface, threatening to unravel everything Ethan had built and the fragile trust growing between them. The city hummed outside the penthouse windows, but inside, Harrison felt a quiet shift. His late-night talk with Ethan had cracked open a door he hadn't known existed, revealing glimpses of a bond forged a decade ago. Yet, even as warmth flickered between them, a nagging unease grew. Something about his father's deal with Ethan didn't add up. Harrison's father, Richard Pierce, had always been a man of secrets, his charm masking a calculating edge. The marriage contract had saved the Pierce family from financial ruin. But what cost? Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the deal than he'd been told. Over breakfast, he decided to confront Ethan. Why did you agree to this marriage? Harrison asked, setting his coffee down. You said it was to protect me. But there's something else. Isn't there? Ethan's fork paused midair, his blue eyes narrowing slightly. Your father came to me with an offer. My company needed a merger to secure a major deal. He had connections. I had capital. The marriage was a way to seal it. Harrison's stomach twisted. So, I was just collateral. No, Ethan said sharply, leaning forward. You were the reason I said yes. The merger was a bonus, but I could have found another way. I did this for you, Harrison, to keep your family from losing everything. The sincerity in Ethan's voice softened Harrison's anger, but doubts lingered. He excused himself and called Lily, who was staying with their aunt in Queens. Lil, has Dad said anything about the deal with Ethan? Anything weird? Lily hesitated. He's been cagey. Harry. Last week, I overheard him on the phone, talking about leverage and keeping Caldwell in line. I didn't get it, but sounded off. Harrison's grip tightened on the phone. Thanks, Lil. Keep an ear out. Okay. That afternoon, Harrison dug deeper. He wasn't a businessman, but he'd grown up around his father's schemes long enough to know where to look. He accessed public records online, searching for ties between Pierce Enterprises and Caldwell. What he found chilled him, a series of shell companies linked to his father, funneling money to an offshore account. One name kept popping up, Vantage Corp, a shadowy firm rumored to be involved in corporate espionage. When Ethan returned that evening, Harrison confronted him with the evidence. What's Vantage Corp? And why's my father tied to it? Ethan's face paled, a rare crack in his composure. Vantage is a competitor. They've been trying to sabotage my company for years. Your father swore he cut ties with them. He didn't, Harrison said, sliding his laptop toward Ethan. Look, Ethan's jaw tightened as he scanned the documents. This is bad. Harrison, if Vantage is involved, they could be using your father to get to me. To us. Us. Harrison's voice wavered. What do they want with me? Ethan's gaze softened, but his words were grim. You're my husband. That makes you a target. The weight of those words settled over Harrison like a storm cloud. Their marriage, already a fragile thread, was now tangled in a web of corporate games and betrayal. Ethan promised to investigate, but Harrison couldn't sit idly by. He needed to confront his father. The next day, Harrison drove to the Pierce family's old office in Brooklyn, a relic of their former glory. Richard was there, hunched over papers, his face lined with stress. Dad, Harrison said, closing the door. What's your deal with Vantage Corp? Richard's eyes widened, then narrowed. You've been snooping. I'm your son, not your pawn, Harrison snapped. Tell me the truth. Richard sighed, rubbing his temples. Vantage approached me years ago. They offered to bail us out if I fed them information on competitors. I stopped. Harrison, I swear. But when our debts piled up, they came back. They wanted dirt on Ethan. Harrison's blood ran cold. And you gave it to them? I had no choice. Richard's voice rose. We were going to lose everything. You sold me out, Harrison said, his voice breaking. You tied me to Ethan to cover your own mess. Richard's silence was answer enough. Harrison left, his heart heavy with betrayal. Back at the penthouse, he told Ethan everything. To his surprise, Ethan didn't lash out. Instead, he pulled Harrison into a tentative embrace, his warmth a stark contrast to the coldness Harrison had come to expect. "I'm sorry," Ethan murmured. "I should have seen this coming." Harrison pulled back, searching Ethan's face. "Why do you care so much? About me? About all this?" Ethan's eyes held a quiet intensity. "Because you're the only person who ever saw me as more than a means to an end. Even now, when you could hate me, you're here, fighting for the truth." The words stirred something deep in Harrison, a spark of the connection they'd had as boys by the lake. For the first time, he let himself lean into Ethan, their foreheads touching, the world fading away. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was trust, fragile and new. But the danger was far from over. That night, Ethan received an anonymous email, a single line, chilling in its simplicity. "We know about 2015. And the merger, or the world will too." Harrison's heart raced. Whatever secrets Ethan was still hiding, they were about to unravel. And the cost could be everything they were starting to build. The email's threat lingered like a shadow. Its words burned into Harrison's mind. "We know about 2015. He and Ethan sat in the penthouse's dimly lit study, the city's glow a stark contrast to the tension between them. Harrison's fingers traced the edge of the old photograph, his heart torn between the growing bond with Ethan and the fear of what secrets remained. "What do they know about 2015? Harrison asked, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Ethan's face was a mask of control, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. "I don't know," he admitted. "But if it's tied to Vantage Corp, it's leverage. Something they think they can use to destroy me." Harrison leaned forward, his hazel eyes locked on Ethan's. "Then we need to figure it out before they do. No more secrets. Ethan, you promised." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "Let's start with what we know. Vantage has been after my company for years. They've tried everything: hacking, lawsuits, smear campaigns. If they're digging into 2015, it's because they think it's a weak spot." Harrison's mind raced back to that summer. He remembered the lake, the late-night talks, the way Ethan had made him feel safe. But there was something else, a memory just out of reach. "Was there anything unusual that summer?" he asked. "Something we did? Something you saw?" Ethan hesitated, then stood, pacing the room. "There was one night," he said slowly. "You were upset. Your father had caught you with a boy from town, a friend. He was furious, said it wasn't acceptable for a Pierce. You told me about it by the lake, said you felt trapped." Harrison's chest tightened. He remembered that night, the shame and anger, the way his father's words had cut deeper than any blade. "What did you do?" he asked. "I listened," Ethan said softly. "And I promised I'd help you get out, find a way to be yourself. But then I left. My foster home changed, and I lost contact. I always regretted it." The confession hit Harrison hard. Ethan had been his ally, even then, but life had torn them apart. "Do you think Vantage knows about that? About me being me?" Ethan's expression darkened. "If they do, they'll use it. Not just against you, but against your family's name. And mine." Harrison stood, anger flaring. "Let them try. I'm not ashamed of who I am." Ethan's eyes softened, a rare warmth breaking through. "I know. And I admire that more than you realize." The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Harrison's heart raced, not from fear, but from the pull of Ethan's gaze. He stepped closer, their breaths mingling. But before anything could happen, Ethan's phone buzzed. A new message. Check your office. Now, they drove to Caldwell Enterprises headquarters, a sleek skyscraper in Midtown. The office was eerily quiet, the city's hum muffled by thick glass. On Ethan's desk was a manila envelope, unmarked. Inside was a single document, a grainy photo of two boys by a lake, unmistakably Harrison and Ethan. With a handwritten note, "You can't hide forever." Harrison's blood ran cold. "They're watching us." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "This ends now. I'm calling my security team. We'll trace this." But Harrison wasn't so sure. Vantage Corp was a ghost, always one step ahead. Over the next few days, Ethan doubled security, hired investigators, and pored over every detail of the merger. Harrison, meanwhile, turned to his own resources. He reached out to an old friend, Marcus, a journalist with a knack for digging up dirt. Marcus agreed to look into Vantage, but his first report was chilling. Vantage wasn't just a company. It was a front for a network of powerful players, including someone close to Harrison's father. The revelation hit Harrison like a freight train. He confronted Richard again, this time at a coffee shop in Williamsburg, to avoid prying eyes. "Who are you working with?" "Dad," Harrison demanded. "Vantage isn't just some company. They're dangerous." Richard's face was ashen. "I didn't know it would go this far," he said, his voice low. "They promised to clear our debts if I gave them leverage on Ethan. I thought it was just business." "Business?" Harrison's voice rose, drawing stares. "They're threatening us." "What did you give them?" Richard looked away. "A recording. From that summer. You and Ethan, talking by the lake. You were open about who you are." Harrison felt sick. His father had betrayed him in the deepest way, exposing his most vulnerable moment. He left without another word, his trust in his father shattered. Back at the penthouse, he told Ethan everything. To his surprise, Ethan didn't blame him. Instead, he took Harrison's hand, his touch steadying. "We'll fight this together," Ethan said. "No matter what they have. They don't know us." Not really. That night, as they sat on the penthouse balcony, the city sprawling below, Harrison felt a shift. Ethan wasn't just the cold CEO or the boy from 2015. He was someone who saw Harrison, flaws and all, and chose to stand by him. Their hands brushed, and Harrison didn't pull away. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a promise. But Vantage wasn't done. The next morning, a news article broke, hinting at a scandal involving Ethan Caldwell's past. The merger was on the brink of collapse, and Harrison knew the worst was yet to come. The news article spread like wildfire. Its vague accusations, Caldwell's hidden past threatens empire, fueling speculation across New York's elite. Harrison watched Ethan's face harden as he read the headlines, his blue eyes icy with determination. They were running out of time, and Vantage Corp was tightening the noose. Harrison's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Found something. Meet me at the diner on 7th. Urgent." He showed it to Ethan, who nodded. "Go. I'll handle things here." The diner was a relic of old Brooklyn, its neon sign flickering in the dusk. Marcus, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a perpetual smirk, slid into the booth across from Harrison. "Vantage isn't just a company," he said, pushing a folder toward Harrison. It's a front for a guy named Victor Lang, a corporate shark who's been after Ethan's company for years. And your father? He's in deep with him. Harrison's stomach churned as he flipped through the documents. Emails, bank records, even a photo of his father shaking hands with a man who must be Lang, a gaunt figure with cold eyes. What do they want? Harrison asked. Control, Marcus said. Ethan's merger would make Caldwell Enterprises untouchable. Lang can't let that happen. That recording of you and Ethan, it's their ace. They'll leak it to tank the merger and ruin Ethan's reputation. Harrison's hands shook. The recording wasn't just a betrayal of his privacy. It was a weapon aimed at Ethan's empire. What can we do? He asked. Marcus leaned forward. Get ahead of it. Go public with your story. On your terms. Lang's power is in secrets. Take that away. And he's got nothing. Harrison returned to the penthouse, his mind racing. Ethan was on a call. His voice clipped as he spoke to his board. When he hung up, Harrison laid out Marcus's plan. We tell the truth, Harrison said. About us. About 2015. If we own it, they can't use it against us. Ethan's jaw tightened. That means exposing you, Harrison. Your identity. Your life. Are you sure? Harrison met his gaze, his heart pounding. I'm done hiding. And I'm not letting them destroy you. For a moment, Ethan just stared, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. Then he nodded. Okay. We do this together. They spent the night crafting a statement. A raw, honest account of their past and their marriage. It wasn't just about defusing Vantage's threat. It was about reclaiming their narrative. Harrison wrote about the boy he'd been, the dreams he'd shared with Ethan, and a marriage that had started as a deal but was becoming something more. Ethan added his own words, admitting his role in the merger and his commitment to Harrison. The next morning, they released the statement through a trusted media outlet. The response was immediate, support from some, backlash from others, but the narrative shifted. The tabloids, hungry for scandal, were forced to pivot to a story of resilience and authenticity. Vantage's leverage was slipping. But Lang wasn't done. That afternoon, a new email arrived, this time with an audio file. Harrison's heart sank as he recognized his own voice, young and vulnerable, talking about his fears of coming out. Ethan's voice was there too, steady and reassuring. The email demanded Ethan cancel the merger, or the audio would go viral. We can't let them win, Harrison said, his voice fierce. We've come too far. Ethan took his hand, his grip firm. Then we fight. But not just for the merger, for us. They turned to Ethan's security team, who traced the email to a server linked to Vantage. With Marcus's help, they uncovered more. Lang had been bribing board members to sabotage the merger from within. Armed with this, Ethan called an emergency board meeting, presenting the evidence and rallying support. Harrison stood by his side, no longer just a figurehead, but a partner. The meeting was tense, but the board sided with Ethan, voting to push the merger through. Lang's plan was crumbling, but Harrison knew he wouldn't go quietly. That night, as they returned to the penthouse, Ethan pulled Harrison close, his voice low. You didn't have to do this. Stand by me. Risk everything. Harrison smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in months. I wanted to. For you. For us. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deepening into something real, something that had been building since that summer by the lake. It wasn't just passion, it was trust, forged through fire. But as they pulled apart, a new message buzzed on Ethan's phone. "You'll regret this." Harrison's blood ran cold. Lang was still out there, and the fight was far from over. The kiss lingered in Harrison's memory, a beacon of hope amidst the storm. But Victor Lang's threat, "You'll regret this," cast a shadow over their victory. The merger was safe, for now, but Harrison knew Lang wouldn't stop. He was a man who thrived on control, and they'd taken that from him. Ethan's security team worked around the clock, tracking Lang's movements. They discovered he was holed up in a penthouse in Chicago, orchestrating his next move. Harrison and Ethan decided to take the fight to him, not with threats, but with truth. They planned a press conference, one that would expose Lang's network and end his games for good. The morning of the conference, Harrison stood in their penthouse, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Ethan appeared behind him, his hands gentle as he straightened the knot. "You ready for this?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Harrison met his gaze in the reflection. "As long as you're with me." Ethan's smile was small but real. Always. The conference was held at Caldwell Enterprises headquarters, the room packed with reporters and cameras. Harrison's heart pounded as he took the podium, Ethan at his side. He spoke first, his voice steady despite the nerves. "This marriage started as a deal," he said, "but it's become more. Ethan and I have a past, one we're proud of, and we won't let anyone use it against us." Ethan stepped forward, detailing Lang's schemes, the bribes, the threats, the recording. He presented evidence from Marcus and the security team, laying bare Vantage Corp's illegal tactics. The room buzzed with shock, cameras flashing as the story unfolded. By the time they finished, Lang's empire was crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. But Lang wasn't one to go quietly. Hours after the conference, a final email arrived, this time with a video. It was grainy, but clear enough. Harrison and Ethan by the lake, their voices young and raw. Harrison confessing his fears about his identity, Ethan promising to stand by him. The email's message was simple. "This goes live in 24 hours unless you surrender the merger." Harrison's hands shook, but Ethan's voice was calm. "Let him release it. We've already told our story. He can't hurt us anymore." Harrison nodded, drawing strength from Ethan's certainty. They spent the night preparing, not for surrender, but for freedom. They contacted allies, rallied support, and leaned on each other. When the video went live the next morning, the response wasn't what Lang expected. Instead of outrage, there was empathy, support, even admiration for their honesty. Social media lit up with messages of solidarity, and the merger held strong. Lang's final gambit failed. Days later, authorities arrested him on charges of corporate espionage and extortion, his network unraveling as his allies turned on him. Harrison's father, shamed by his role, stepped back from Pierce Enterprises, leaving to Harrison and Lily to rebuild. In the weeks that followed, Harrison and Ethan settled into a new rhythm. The penthouse, once cold, felt like home. They cooked together, laughed, argued, and fell deeper into something neither had dare name. One evening, as autumn leaves fell outside, Harrison took Ethan's hand, leading him to the balcony. I used to think marriage was a trap, Harrison said, his voice soft. But with you, it's freedom. Ethan's eyes shone, his hand tightening around Harrison's. I spent years building walls, thinking they'd protect me. But you're my home. Harrison, they kissed under the city lights, the weight of the past lifting. Their marriage, born of duty, had become a choice, one rooted in love, trust, and the promise of a future they'd build together. The world still turned, with its challenges and uncertainties. But Harrison knew they'd face it side by side, as equals, as partners, as two souls who'd found each other twice in one lifetime. Their story wasn't just about surviving a conspiracy or defying expectations. It was about discovering that love, even when forced, could bloom into something real, something worth fighting for. And as they stood together, the city sprawling below, Harrison felt it in his bones. They were unstoppable,